Hello friends, I'm Shelly Clough and we have made it to day 12 of our 12 days of Christmas tags. This is the wreath that we are going to be painting today. It's a really fun wreath that has lots of elements to it, and you could totally expand this design onto a Christmas card or something. Let's go ahead and dive in. For my tag, I'm just using paper that I punched into a circle. I just used my Canson XL watercolor paper and then punched it with this circle punch. All of that is linked below if you need one. And then for my paints, I just have my starter palette. All of that is linked below, as well as a swatch card to the way I set up my palette. And then for a brush today, I'm just going to use a size 6 silver black velvet because it's got that super precise point that's going to help me make some of the tiny little elements of this design. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I do on this wreath is make a super light circle to kind of guide the placement of my wreath. And as I do that, I'm just sort of gauging equal distance from the edge of my tag. And if it's not totally perfect, that's okay, but it just sort of gives me an anchor point as I start building out the other elements. So the first thing I do is I'm going to build these leaves. So we're just going to think of this wreath like a puzzle, and we're just going to do one piece at a time, and then it's going to come together by the end of it. So the first thing I'm doing are these little green leaves, and I'm just mixing up Viridian Green and Burnt Umber for those. And I'm going to do little sets of leaves like this, just kind of staggered throughout the wreath in a few different places. Some big and some small. And maybe one more over here. Okay, so there's my kind of element 1. And element 2 is going to be some little pine needles. So I'm actually just going to stick with that same green, maybe add a little bit of brown to it. And I'm going to just very lightly make little lines with these pine needles coming off. So the pine needles are just little flicks with my brush, super light. And I'm going to do a few of those around my wreath. Just kind of a little line to guide me, and then these skinny little flicks for my pine needles. Okay, and I'm going to do about 3 of those. Come over here and do one more. Okay, now that I've got those elements on, I'm going to go in with another kind of leaf. So you see here I have these really light green leaves, kind of more of a eucalyptus color. And I'm going to make that with sap green and some ultramarine blue. And then just water that down so it's nice and light. Adding water to that puddle. And then I'm going to come, and these leaves I like to make a little bigger and almost more round. And what this is doing is I am just creating variety with my wreath. I'm creating a variety of colors and shapes and textures. I'm just placing a few of those kind of in any little empty pockets that I have. All right, so I'm good with that for now. And then before I get too far, I'm going to add some little berries. So for my berries, I do that with alizarin crimson and cadmium red. And you don't really need to paint tiny little circles because it's really hard to create a perfect circle with a brush in a really tiny space. So I actually just make little dashes almost that give the impression of circles. So if I come here, just kind of little dashes. And those look like my berries, and I'm just going to do a few of those around my wreath. You can do them in groups of 3. You can also do little spots of 2 berries. And I just sort of want them a little bit balanced. Maybe I'll do 2 more over here. Okay, so there's my berries. And then I have a couple more elements that are more loose and playful. So one of them is going to be, I want a yellower green. I'm going to make that with yellow ochre and sap green. So again, just sort of continuing on with that variety of colors and textures. So with that really yellow green, I'm just going to make some little kind of scratchy marks. Let me hold that up close so you can kind of see what I'm doing. They're not really leaf shapes, they're just sort of giving the impression of some kind of greenery. And I'm just going to place a few of those throughout the wreath, wherever there's kind of some gaps that need to be filled in. So I'm going to do a few of those, and then I'm going to do the same sort of shape, but in more of a dark blue. So I'm going to take some indigo and a little bit of Prussian blue and do the same thing with some blue marks. So I'm going to do kind of maybe some right here, add a little more indigo to that. You come over here, and you can do this over some things that you've already painted. Like, don't be afraid to layer a little bit. As long as you're not painting on somewhere that's super wet, it will be fine. Okay, maybe some right here. And then what I'm going to do, I have one more element where I like to add little twigs. And this particular wreath, I feel like it looks kind of funny until the very end when we go through. We're going to add some pen marks on top of it. So just trust the process on this one. It will come together. But for my brown here, I'm just mixing burnt umber with some Payne's Gray to get a nice deep brown. And then I'm just going to come in here and make little Ys. So I make the main stick and then make a little Y off of that. And a little Y off of that. Over here, kind of same thing. Main stick, little Y. I like to add little bends here and there. And it sort of helps to add some heaviness if there's anywhere it feels like it needs it without overwhelming anything. Just my little twigs. Okay, feeling pretty good about this. Now I'm going to let this dry completely, and then we're going to do a little bit of pen work over the top of it, and that's just really going to bring it together. I may actually, so this part right here feels a little empty to me. I may add just a little bit of like some pine needle right there, just to sort of fill in the gap. Okay, now I'm going to let it dry and come back. Okay, now my tag is totally dry. I'm just going to come in with one of my Micron pens. I've been enjoying my 005 size lately. It's just a little bit more petite than the 01. And the first thing I'm going to do is outline some of the bigger leaves that I did. So I'm just sort of grabbing those shapes and pulling them out. So when I outline, I just go around the perimeter and then a little line through the middle to help add some dimension there. Just going through and making sure I've caught pretty much all of those. I don't need to catch every single one. I'm also going to outline my berries just sort of with fun little loops. I'm not going to be super precise. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just add some little scribbles over some of these loose marks that we made. So kind of like this. I'm going to come up close so you can see that. Just little scribbles over some of those loose marks. And what that does is just sort of balances some of the weight, because the pen adds like a certain weight to the art. And I just want to make sure that that looks balanced throughout. So just kind of anywhere that feels like it needs a little bit of that. You can even do it where you haven't really painted something, but you just want to add a little something. You can do that. Okay, so once you've got feeling good about your pen, first of all, can we just appreciate how nice it looks now that we've added the pen on that one? I feel like this one always makes me nervous until the end when we go over it with pen. Okay, so now sometimes it's kind of tricky to figure out what looks best as the top of this particular wreath. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it does. So I'll just kind of rotate it around. I feel fine about this being my top. I'm just going to punch that right there and then grab some of my twine. This twine and hole punch and all that is linked below if you need some. I'm just going to fold that over. Take my fold, I'm going to put it through the hole. Then I've got a loop and tails. I put my tails through the loop and pull, and there is my little wreath. Okay, well, thank you so much. We made it all the way through 12 days of Christmas tags. These are all in a playlist now, so you can see all 12 of them. I'm also going to be back with some Christmas card designs coming up, so look for that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you subscribe to the channel, and we will see you all in the next video.